So what was it like to be in the snow today? What was the
Like
vibe? I mean, it looked on TV like there was just a ridiculous amount of snow.
us, it's like 2 feet.
2 feet's an amazing amount of snow.
Yeah.
They said that it was a blizzard in
I
some
guess
parts.
if the wind weren't so heavy, I don't think it would be as like shocking, but it is like the snow's coming down horizontally.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like annoying. Like we already did this. We don't need to do it again. Snow days aren't as fun when you're an adult.
Well, we're going to Florida on Thursday.
That's great for you.
It
Um,
was will be thawing because
Got
it's
it.
going to continue to be freaking cold. It's crazy.
No, I'm like really sick of it. I'm really, really sick of
Yeah.
it. You guys have Debbie's party. Anything else?
Yeah, make sure you don't air this before the party. That'd be a funny way to blow the surprise.
Uh-huh.
Have her learn about it on a podcast.
Right, right.
Yeah,
It will be
yeah,
the true test if she's actually listening, you know?
right,
Yeah.
right.
People liked our tax banter on the podcast this morning.
Who'd you get the feedback from?
My dental school friends, they were like, we're dying.
By the way, he was a really good guest. I mean, he had the right amount of. He took a question, gave a thoughtful response, but didn't. I mean, I was going to say give him to other guests as an example of like a
How you
good,
should behave.
right, how to answer a
Right. Make,
question.
make our lives easier and just act how he does.
Well, it's also, I mean, we want to hear from the guest. We want to hear what they have to say rather than
Yeah.
just.
It was awesome. Dr. Nick Mavro's episode for those who are wanting to check it out. Today, we are sitting down with a true powerhouse in the world of high-end aesthetics. Dr. Ira Savetsky's path to the top is unmatched. After a prestigious residency at NYU, his formal training culminated in a highly sought-after fellowship in aesthetic surgery of the face, nose, breasts, and body at the Dallas Plastic Surgery Institute, widely considered the gold standard of training in the world. Today, he's a distinguished leader in the industry, known for his work with celebrities and the New York City elite who trust him with his precision and artistry. But his influence goes far beyond the OR and how I found Dr. Savetsky. With a following of nearly 100,000, he has built a massive digital community drawn to his expertise and his signature aesthetic. So we're going to pick his brain on what it takes to run a world-class practice and manage a brand at this level.
One of the things I wanted to ask that I didn't get a chance to ask him is, and I think this goes to his natural aesthetic, that his kind of his style, but you see people on the street from time to time, and you can tell some of them have had notable work. Either their nose is very artificial looking, or their skin is very plasticine and very tight and stretched, those kind of things, or, certain body parts are larger than normal. And it's just like, how do you stay away from that? Obviously there are plastic surgeons out there who, if you go to them, that can be the end result. Just on a couple of the before and afters that you sent me from him, he's obviously very skilled and a
The vibe
offshore
I
guy.
got from him and just this conversation in general is like he's kind of created a brand for himself, whether it was intentional or not. It's just that like you trust him, you trust his office, you trust his ability, you trust that he's listening to your interests. It's like he kind of creates this like partnership between he and his patients that like it sounds like they because of social media that they know what they're getting when they go into him. No one who wants like crazy ass is like, let's go to Dr. Savetsky. I want to like have my ass like, go to the moon from here. Like that's not who his patients are because they know that that's not what he does. And so I think it like to his point, like he probably has like a pretty good conversion that it's like just because if you get 100 consults, but only one of them wants to follow through a treatment, who cares? So what he was saying about the Google search engine, I don't know. I thought that was like such an interesting point that like putting yourself out there and sharing about you, whether like just being authentic, I think it builds community. And that's super important when you're changing your body and face.
The other question I wanted to ask him, business related, was at what point of backlog did he kind of feel relieved of the
Eddie.
stress of worrying about filling his pipeline? Now, was it 3 months of patients bookings? Was it a month? You know, like when did he finally kind of feel like, okay, this has got some momentum behind it, and you know, I don't have to stay up at night worrying where my next patients are coming from. Or
Yeah.
maybe you always feel that way. You know,
Right,
maybe
right.
it never goes
Well, it
away and you
sounds like
just have to deal with
that's
it.
like because it kind of feels like he reached like the pinnacle of his career. He could keep going, of course, but that's why I asked a question related to that. And it sounds like, he probably like more patients, more back booked, what do you call it, backlogging, whatever. Like the more booked he is, the more secure he feels and successful he feels. And so like that, it probably like the limit does not exist, you know?
He had said that he wanted a year's worth,
Yeah.
that that would be his kind of overall goal. So
So
I think he
crazy.
said he's got 3 to 5 months of bookings. So, you know, that's still a long ways to grow his practice to get
Yeah,
to that point.
that's a good point.
So, but it really thoughtful guy, you know, definitely seemed skilled, trustworthy, patient's best interest at heart, all the qualities that you would want from
I
somebody.
I like that he said, with younger doctors, and maybe that's because I'm a younger doctor, that's why I feel that way. But I like that he said because like we're excited and we're fresh and we like want to do really, really good work, that there's some value in that of being young. Like I kind of feel that way. I don't want like some like old doctor who's kind of like, whatever, like I built my reputation. If I miss a couple, like she's not famous. She's not going to tell that many people. It's, you know what I mean? Like, that's not what I want. I want someone who's like, this is really serious and important to me. And so I don't know. I thought that was like a comforting point for growing your practice from the beginning. So let's welcome Dr. Ira Savetsky to Medical Morons.
I knew from, I guess, a young age, or I guess my mom knew from a young age that I was going to become a doctor. And then at some point, I figured out that that was going to be my path. My older brother is a doctor, and just thinking about what seemed most interesting to me, I felt just some type of surgery was going to be interesting. For some reason in my head through college and even through most of medical school, I really thought I wanted to be a surgical oncologist. I thought operating on the liver and the pancreas and sort of those areas were very interesting, and I thought it was very altruistic, helping people with cancer and helping people live longer lives and all of that. And then I think at some point during really my intern year, when I started to get a better picture of what the day-to-day was, some of those things ends up being pretty taxing. And I spent some time with the plastic surgeons after one of these cases, and I thought, okay, well, this is kind of cool. I could kind of do cancer reconstruction, but some of the other things associated with the disease I didn't have to kind of deal with. So I felt like it was kind of a really good balance between being involved with cancer patients and reconstruction. I thought was the surgeries were very interesting. And then during my residency, I felt like aesthetic surgery in many ways was the most challenging, and the stakes were almost higher because when you're doing reconstructive surgery, you're trying to return back to sort of normal function. When you're dealing with aesthetics, you're sometimes going beyond sort of the norm, and obviously you're taking someone that for all intents and purposes is there's nothing wrong with them, and you're putting them through surgery to um, fix something that they don't like or they want to improve upon. So I liked that aspect of it, um, and I love what I do now, and I think it's superbly interesting, and I meet really great people.
So you did residency, and then you did a research year in cancer reconstruction, something along those lines.
Yeah, something along those lines. Exactly. It
And
was
then
actually a
and then you did an
plastics.
aesthetic fellowship in addition to
Yes.
plastic surgery. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like most people don't do residency for 8 years and then an additional aesthetic fellowship. Is that
Yeah, so basically the way it was structured, I basically did 3 years of general surgery, 3 years of plastic surgery, so kind of end up being like a combined program. Now it's a little bit different. They come out of medical school and they do like 6 years of plastic surgery. There used to be more of a 3+3 type of training. Now it's just kind of 1+5, or it's just 6 years. In the middle of my training, I did 2 years of research, which was basically a plastic surgery lab at Sloan Kettering. So it's basically studying lymphatic biology, which is related to lymphedema, which is a disease that plastic surgeons tend to treat and take care of. And then after all of that, I really felt like what I was lacking, what I was most interested in, and what I really wanted to specialize in was aesthetic surgery, particularly of the face and nose. And at that point, I already put in 8 years. What's another year?
So you made a point a moment ago about how the difference between aesthetic medicine and sort of other medicine practice. I'm guessing many of your cases are people who are perfectly fine, but are unhappy with some aspect of their appearance, and they're coming to you to change that. Talk a little bit about, as a doctor, your mindset about that. I'm sure there's some amazing highs, especially complex cases where you may even have turned someone's life around by changing something, but also the mindset of the patients who just are looking in the mirror and seeing something, and maybe the rest of us would say it's fine, but they're eager to have it corrected surgically.
Yeah, I think there's some amazingly rewarded parts, particularly, I think of like young patients who feel very insecure about, let's say, their nose, and, maybe they were even getting bullied about it at one point in their childhood. And correct it to their liking, and they just have this like newfound confidence all of a sudden. And it's amazing to see that transformation pretty rapidly. And, you always have to sort of weed out the ones who have, let's say, body dysmorphia, people that are focusing on things that um, aren't really there. You have to be careful. You don't want to operate on people like that, and you have to be gentle in your approach and how you talk to those patients. But yeah, I think it's very gratifying in general, like making people feel good and making them feel good about how they look. It's fun as a whole. I mean, there's always drawbacks and there's always negative people everywhere in life, but the positive far outweighs any negative.
So Kylie sent me a before and after of your mother-in-law. So can you talk about what I mean? And by the way, in the after, she's an attractive woman both before and after, but the after, she really does
Yeah.
look stellar in the picture. So congratulations. But what was it like dealing with that and your mother-in-law, if you don't mind talking about that a little bit? Because I would be interested in that particular.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that I like my mother-in-law, so it was helpful
That helps.
to that helps. So I really wanted to take care of her and do something for her. Initially, I'd sent her to other mentors and other people. I was trying to kind of encourage her to go with some other people that I really trusted, and I think ultimately she felt like I was going to take care of her the most. And I guess because I have to see her at, Thanksgiving dinners and stuff. So, but she was great. I think anytime you operate on family members or friends, I think that I think there's always a little bit of a gray area in general. I think that not all situations are the same, but I do think that in general it happens a lot. I mean, a lot of your friends are going to feel most comfortable if you do something for them rather than somebody that's relatively random. And yeah, so it was a good experience.
That's awesome.
Good to hear.
Um, okay, I do have some more questions on this topic, but I kind of want to bring it back and then we'll come back. So, right after you graduated your final fellowship, what was your next step? Did you know you wanted to have your own practice? And if you did, like, what were the steps to get there and kind of challenges that you had to overcome along the way?
Yes, after I finished my fellowship training, it was actually COVID, which was an interesting time. I graduated 2020, and um, I always knew I wanted to open up a private practice in New York City. And I wanted to do it in a solo manner. I didn't really want to join anyone. I felt like I wanted to do it on my own because during our training, we start a new chapter at the beginning. So, right, you go to medical school or dental school, yeah, then you're a first year student, and then you go to residency, you're a first year resident, and then you go to a fellowship, you're sort of starting and from the bottom. And I felt like I don't want to join another practice and like start at the bottom and then at some point go on your own. I don't want to be, in my 50s and then like branch out on my own and kind of start. So I really want to just try to get out and do it as fast as possible. And even though it was going to be, maybe painful and learning at the beginning, I felt like long term I was going to get to where I wanted to get to quickly. So when I graduated, it was COVID. I actually was ready to move back to New York and start a practice, but my wife had other plans. She was pregnant with our third child, and she said to me, everybody's leaving New York. Why would we go back to New York? And I said, well, because New York will be fine. New York always comes back. I wasn't worried about it, but she was like, well, I'm not going back. So I said, okay. So I said, I need to
Wise
find
man.
it. Yeah, I was like, well, I don't really have a choice. So we ended up, I said, well, I don't have a job. And I was finishing up it was like springtime. I had a few, 3 months left of fellowship. I didn't have a job. So I started asking around and calling around. And I heard that there was some large dermatology group that was looking for a plastic surgeon. And so I literally just cold called them. There was no ad saying this. I just called the front desk in one of the offices. I said, hey, are you looking for a plastic surgeon? And they said, we don't know, but we'll forward it to the practice manager. And she had responded to me and said, we actually hired a plastic surgeon, but we looked at your CV. We were so impressed that why don't you come in for an interview? And they ended up hiring me, and they ended up hiring two plastic surgeons. That was sort of my first initial job after training. And it was a great experience because it was sort of building my own practice within a practice because they had never had a plastic surgeon before. Fast forward, I was there for about 2 years and everything was great. I started to get really busy by the end of year two. And at that point, New York was starting to get back to itself. So we moved back. And again, like I felt like I wanted to open up my own practice. How am I going to do it? I didn't really think about it. Like you mentioned, like the actual logistics of doing it. I knew I needed a physical space and I know I needed to hire someone and how am I going to get patients? I didn't really totally think it through and I think in some ways I purposely didn't because I didn't want to be stressed out over something I had no control over. So, but yeah, eventually I found a space. I put some money away over the first 2 years of working, enough to sort of get things going. I didn't have to take out a business loan, although I did think about it because, it is daunting and I needed money not only to start my practice, but I also needed money to support my family and my three kids. So I definitely did not think it through. And I can't say that I remember my father-in-law, I said, I'm gonna go move to New York and open practice. He's like, what's your business plan? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, did you write up a business plan? And I said, no, but I'm gonna write one up. And I remember just making an Excel spreadsheet, like, all the expenses that I could think about and what I think it would gonna cost. And I just kind of put it out there and on one column and then in the other column just kind of figuring out how much money I need to make to break even and generate a profit. But I think that so many people discouraged me. They said, "Oh, New York is such a saturated market. There's so many plastic surgeons." But I was never deterred by people that were negative about that. I think in general that if you're motivated and if you're a good surgeon and a good person, I think you'll be successful no matter wherever you're going to be.
Totally, totally. And how did you, because I mean, they're not wrong. I'm not saying that should have deterred you, but they're not wrong. There's a plastic surgeon. It feels like all over. You're seeing all these kind of befores and afters, and you have made a name for yourself where really like high-end, particular, picky people. I mean, everyone's picky about certain things. No one's more picky about anything than their face, you know? So how did you, within 5 years, make a name for yourself?
Yeah, so I think in New York particularly, to be successful, I think you need to kind of figure out where you're gonna meet people that are going to fit the demographic of the patients that you're looking for. I think that, I mean, obviously being from New York and I lived in New York throughout residency for, the whole time, I think was helpful. But you're right, just because they know you socially doesn't mean they're going to come to you for their face. There's always going to be people who believe in you, that you have the training and have the desire to give people really good results. Because I think about that, I'm like, when you first open up your practice, why would somebody come to you versus someone who's been in practice for 3 decades? And I do think that people do have an affinity for some younger surgeons because I think they do think that you're going to take really good care of them, meaning you're going to answer their text messages quicker than someone who's, let's say, been in practice for 30 years. You're going to, if they have more questions, you're going to answer them. And I think to a large extent that is true. I think when it comes to plastic surgery, people have to obviously think that you're going to do a good job. That's at baseline. There's a lot of plastic surgeons that can deliver great results. But I think at the end of the day, people want to feel like they know you and that you're going to take care of them. And I think that's the most important thing. And I think I encourage people to see multiple surgeons for their consultations if they desire to, because I think it is a relationship, and you have to sit down and meet that other. You have to meet the surgeon, and you have to feel like that you jive. At the end of the day, it's a little bit more of a feel. It's like going on multiple first dates, and who do you feel like going on a second date with?
Is there an aspect to the practice that is creative and artistic? I mean, do you see yourself as somebody who, you have a canvas and you're painting on it, or is one procedure versus another procedure versus another, they're all basically the same technique and it's more repetitive than that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for creativity. I think people desire different aesthetics and results, but I also think that I have my own aesthetic and I have my own sort of approach to things. And I think they come to me because they like my aesthetic. I think as a whole, my aesthetic is more natural. I think that, if someone's coming in for a facelift, they trust that they're going to look like themselves, just a better, more refreshed version of themselves. I think that, that's very important. And I think that if someone's aesthetic and what they're trying to achieve doesn't match up with mine, I think it's important to tell them that. Then maybe they'll find someone that better matches with their aesthetic. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna do anything that I don't think is gonna look great. And, again, like these people are walking around the Upper East Side or wherever they're from, Long Island and Westchester and Jersey, and you don't want someone advertising something that you're not proud of.
I mean, but when I was growing up on Long Island, a number of the kids I went to high school with had their noses done, and there was a plastic guy named Dr. Diamond, and there was sort of the diamond nose, and people in my town used to refer to it because a lot of the people who he worked on came out with the same looking nose. You're
Yes.
wincing when I say these things, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I think that's I mean, I've heard of Dr. Diamond. I've heard exactly what you're referring to. And I think that, there are some surgeons who will do the same exact operation, will do the same, will give everyone the same, nose or neck or face with, sort of very little individualized attention. Um, I think a lot of times it works great, and I think that some people love it. But I like to spend a lot of time before surgery talking to patients to really get an idea of what they're looking for. And I think there is wiggle room, and you don't want to do the same thing for everyone. I think that's a disservice.
Yeah, I'm sure. Because I mean, yeah, no one wants to have like the same nose as someone else when they spent like thousands of dollars on it. They want their unique nose. That's very funny though, and that you remember that, Dad. In those early days, like I know you can get patients and stuff, but were there any like noticeable turning points, whether it was through social media or Google search, like SEO, or any kind of strategies you use that you were like, that worked, that didn't work, that worked, like that you could kind of give a shortcut for people who are
Yes. No, I think that's a
your
great
trial and
question.
error.
Yes. So in terms of like marketing stuff, I'll tell you, I did some Google ads, and maybe I wasn't spending enough money on it because I really felt like I was not getting anything useful. So I was spending maybe $2,000 a month I did it for maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years, and then I actually like sat down and looked it over with the people that were doing it, and I was like, can you look at to see, because you could look at the analytics, like how many people called, or it's imperfect, but how many people went to schedule a consult. So I ended up like looking at all the phone numbers, and I saw like I think one consult or maybe two that actually came in after all those, who didn't end up even booking for surgery, was like not a great type of person. So I immediately just kind of stopped doing that, and I felt like as a whole it was not very useful. I think probably it used to be more useful, and I also think that depending on what market you're in and depending on what you're trying to, what type of procedures you're trying to do with it. But I think like, there are people in the city who spend tens of thousands of dollars on it, almost to kind of keep the smaller people down, to like not give them a chance. But I really did not feel that that was a good ROI at all. For me, social media in general was always my strongest. I always felt like, just for me, social media, what I love about it is that it's free, right? Obviously, you don't have to pay for anything. It could, reach a large audience. And I think in general, most people are looking on social media as a whole. So that's where the eyeballs are. So I've tried different strategies with social media. I've tried initially, I never tried actual ads, but I think those do work. From what I understand, you could target audiences. There was a time I tried boosting some posts. I felt like I was not I was getting like inquiries, but it was didn't feel like I was getting good inquiries. I didn't think the quality was good. So I eventually just stopped that, and I didn't think I was getting good ROI on that. And so okay, so what have I done? So then I've done PR. I hired a PR firm for the first maybe, I don't know, year. I was getting some like, I would say like press mentions. I never felt press gets patients in the door. So I think it's good for SEOs. Like I think, the website people will tell you it's good obviously for SEO. And I think there is value to that. But I don't think SEO in general is as valuable as it used to be, even though I have, a great website people and they do that, but I don't think it's how it used to be. So in summary, Google ads did not find helpful. Traditional PR did not find helpful. I stopped that after a year. Organic social media, I think, was the best. So right now, I don't spend any money on marketing. It's all just organic, word of mouth, and that's it. I mean, I tried at one point also along social media. I tried like doing more like professional videos, and again I felt like my like walking and talking on the street into my phone would perform better, and it was free. I think social media these days, it favors authenticity and rawness, and I think that's what, TikTok, that why that's so popular, and I still haven't really figured out TikTok in general, but in general, I think that they favor authenticity and rawness. So more professional videos and photos, I think, don't perform well. I post before and after photos just because I feel like you need to have them. It's like having them on a website, but I don't think that in general, I don't think they do well unless it's like a really significant, delta, like a big change.
What kind of Instagram posts do you find are the most successful that drive the most traffic?
Well, anything controversial is definitely going to drive traffic because,
Good point.
again, social media will favor controversy. But I think that I think just the posts that do the best are authenticity. I think in general, like I think just kind of, and I don't do a lot of it. Like I don't know if I like was speaking from the heart about something that really, I don't know, meant a lot to me. I think that, that does well. But in general, I think that what I like about social media, and I know people have mixed feelings about it, especially when they're building a practice. I've always incorporated things personally and professionally. I feel like it's beneficial because when patients come and see me, they already feel like they know me. They feel like they know my family. They feel like they know where I stand on a lot of different areas. And so they already come in biased towards liking me. And I do feel like I don't have to sell them so much about me. It's more about me learning about them. And I think that it makes my consults more enjoyable. It makes me feel like I'm meeting more of a friend than a stranger. So I really think that putting yourself out on social media as much as possible and also putting yourself out just like in a more personal manner will bode well.
I wanted to ask a little bit about how you manage patient experience and
Hmm.
the team that you have, and how what kind of culture you try to cultivate in the practice. And when somebody walks in the door, is there a vibe that you want them to catch on to as soon as that door is opened and they come in? And how do you develop that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think about number one, it was really important for me to find the right space because I felt like, that's the first thing that patients see. It's where are you located? What's your address? What does your door look like before they even come in? And for me, I felt it was very important to have a particular location. I'm on Park Avenue, and it's very sort of stereotypical New York City plastic surgeon, but I do think that there is some value to that. And I do think that patients feel like, if you're someone that's sort of in the heart of the lines then and you're surviving and you're doing well, you must be good. And there is some truth to that. So I feel like although at the beginning when you're first starting out, you want to try to save money, I do think that that's not one of the areas that you should cut back on. I think that you're going to be in this location for, let's say, at least 5, 10 years. It's good to sort of start off on the best foot possible when it comes to location. After that, you need to you got to hire at least. I hired one person, my office manager, who was also my front desk, who was also my medical assistant, and you got to have one person that you can bring on that fits your philosophy and who's willing to sort of grow with you and believes in you. And I was very lucky to find a really good um, person who was energetic and also presented very well. They understood that you're a luxury item. You're not Walmart. You're Hermes, and you need patients to feel like they're walking into Hermes, and they're gonna spend a lot of money. They're going to want to have an experience that matches that. So hiring the right people who understand that philosophy and everyone sort of buys into that, I think is critical. So I think you need to sort of present well physically, and then you need to hire the people that are going to buy into that. And obviously it's imperfect. I mean, you're going to hire some outstanding people, and then you're going to hire people that may seem outstanding at first, and then maybe you both learn that it's not exactly the right fit, and that's okay. I mean, that's sort of part of the process. I'm very lucky now to have like a really great team of people who all get along and who really buy into to all of it.
And do you engage in team building kind of stuff? Do you have periodic meetings? Do you go to offsites? Do you have parties? How do you
Yeah,
pursue that?
I wish we did more. We all live busy lives, and I never want to like. I remembered in residency, we'd have these residency building activities, and we used to call it like mandated fun. And like yes, I enjoyed working with so many of the people that I was with in residency, but I'm also spending like 100 hours a week with these people. Like I don't need to spend another 3 hours with them like at a bar. I'd rather just kind of go home, hang out with my wife, and like maybe like just sleep a little bit. But nonetheless, we did it and we showed up with a smile. So I never wanted to sort of force it upon my staff to like come hang out together, because I feel like sometimes maybe they have other things that they'd rather be doing than hang out with me some more. But I do think it's important to show gratitude. And I do think that it is nice to sometimes take take them out to go to a really nice restaurant and speak about how much you appreciate them, and sort of give them, even at the end of a tough day, just thanking them, for their great work, I think goes a long way. Obviously, like financial bonuses and things like that are important too, but I think that just acknowledging how much you appreciate them, I think, is very helpful. And I also invite them to, if I ever have like a personal, like I had my daughter's bat mitzvah last year, I invited all them to that. We have a Hanukkah party every year in my house, and I invite everyone to that. So I think that bringing them into your own personal orbit, I think, makes them feel special.
Definitely. If you want them to like sell the Hermes experience, they also have to get the Hermes experience. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering if, obviously you could just stay where you are and kind of cruise for the next 20 years or whatever, however long you want to be doing this. But my hunch is that the bar keeps getting raised higher and higher. Do you have kind of new aspirations that you envision for the next 10 years, or are you kind of like, let's just keep doing what we do?
I think that there's a few in plastic surgery. There's a few different models. I think that there's a model of scaling up and hiring people to work under you. I think that's more of that's a different type of brand than I would say that I'm building. For me, it's this, it's a luxury item. It's kind of interesting because in plastic surgery in general, when you build a reputation, people come to your office and because they're coming for you, and they want you to perform their surgery. And I think it becomes difficult to scale up and bring somebody on unless maybe they're my daughter or my son, because I think there is a natural rapport and trust that patients have in those situations. But I think it's harder for patients to sort of trust as much sort of some person that they've never met before. So I think for me, my goal is I'm just focused on me personally being like the best surgeon I could be and continue to just do great work and to build up a reputation where let's say I'm booked out instead of 3, 4, 5 months to be booked out a year. And those are my goals. I just want to be booked out for a long period of time. But I think that I feel very fortunate and lucky, and that as long as I continue to be healthy and operate, and that I'm okay with kind of exactly where I am, just being the best version of myself.
That's great. I'd say that's the dream for most people. So congratulations that you're living it. Dad, I do have some like plastic surgery guilty pleasure questions I need to ask. Do you have any final business related questions you need to ask?
No, no, no. Go take a swing.
Okay. So for starters, what are people getting? Like what are celebrities getting that are making them look younger, that are kind of not as obvious to someone like me who hasn't had any plastic surgery yet?
Yeah, the younger ones, what they're doing, I think it's more about eyes and brows. I think uh, they're doing less filler. We're doing more fat transfers, which I always believed very strongly in. So I think in general we're returning back to sort of normal ratios, and there's much less emphasis on being overdone and overfilled, and we're returning back to a much better place in our society when it comes to that. A lot of it's Kardashian driven.
Speaking of, do you think Kendall Jenner has had plastic surgery? Like she had to have, right?
I mean, I think that if your
Get
last name
filler
is
at least. She
Jenner
got
or
filler.
Kardashian, there's a high chance that you've had some type of
You
medical
saw the
procedure.
controversy that she said she never had any type of plastic surgery.
Yeah, yeah, no, I saw it. I mean, obviously it's always hard when you're looking at before and after photos, because, you're looking at a photo when they're like 13, 14 years
Right.
old and they're showing. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely parts of her face that I think look like they've underwent some type of surgery.
All right, just checking. And then what kind of things do you do as, I'm not asking plastic surgery wise, but for yourself, like health wise, like supplements or retinols or things just for longevity purposes that you believe in?
Yeah, I think the longevity aspect of medicine is sort of the most interesting and exciting part of of where we are now when it comes to just sort of elective type of medicine. And I think that's sort of for 2026, in terms of what sort of the Rolls Royce of aesthetics. I think it's incorporating all these things together. I think that peptides and supplements and the way we're sort of exercising and training, I think things are really shifting a lot. For myself personally, I haven't gotten all in on some of that stuff yet, but I'm like fascinated by it and I'm interested in it and I want to do more of it. Um, in terms of training, what I do now is, now that I'm in my 40s, I felt like I needed to start lifting more in terms of weight wise. So now I got a trainer a few days a week, and when I'm not operating, I go early in the morning. I work out with a trainer and we lift. I think it's just really important to just move as much as possible. I think if you can move every day for at least 30 minutes, I think that's great. And then in terms of skincare, I think tretinoin or Retin-A is honestly like the best thing. And I think that, a lot of skincare lines, they talk about retinols, which is sort of a very minor version of Retin-A. Retin-A is obviously is prescription and you have to sort of slowly work your way up. But in terms of the science behind it, in terms of how to really keep your skin looking young long term, I think Retin-A is super important.
So I'm on, I think I'm on the second highest dose of Retin-A of tretinoin. I think
Hmm.
it's 0.05, right?
That's good.
Should I be trying to work my way up to zero point 0.1 or like I can stay like what any
Yeah. Are you doing it every night?
I was just in Florida, so I like
Yeah, yeah.
was
You got to back away.
I'm not as consistent as I should be. So maybe I need to work.
Yeah, I think once you get to a point where you're doing it every night and you're not getting very red and very dry, I think it's good. It's funny. I was doing great on 0.05 every day for a long time, and then I went up to the point one, and it's harder to do that every night. But there's actually, I think, data that shows that there's not a great difference between 0.05 and point 0.1, and I think you're probably getting the same benefits. But I think the goal is to get to the highest and doing it every night without drying your skin out.
Right, right. I know that's the challenge. Okay, we always like to finish with like a funny story that happened either in your education or in your career that's just like very relatable for clinicians who are working with patients and crazy stuff happens all the time.
My goodness. Well, I did my training at NYU, and a part of that training is working at Bellevue Hospital, which is quite an experience. There's probably endless stories. I'm trying to think. I guess one time I was like walking through the ER as a plastic surgery resident, and you get to know the ER doctors very well because you're down there a lot as a consult resident and everything. And there's some kind of crazy guy in the ER, and he was, I don't know if he was high or just kind of mentally unwell, but he was just like screaming in the ER, and he said, "I only want the Jewish doctor, the Jewish doctor." So,
You know what?
um,
It's better than the opposite.
yeah, like I don't want the Jewish doctor.
Right.
Yeah. So this guy was screaming, "I only want the Jewish doctor," and like, I mean, there was other Jewish doctors there, but like the ER doctors, they were all just pointing at me because they all knew I was obviously Jewish, and they're like, "He's the guy," and I was like, "I'm gonna leave here."
I'm good. I'm good. Another Jewish guy can take him.
Yes.
That's really, really funny. Well, we've taken so much of your time. I'm sure you're exhausted and want to spend time with your family. Where can people find you? Where can they learn about your work and kind of work with you if they're interested in some plastic surgery?
Sure. Yeah, I think social media again is my strength. So you could just look me up at just Dr. Ira Savetsky. And I have a website, but I don't know how many people look at websites anymore. It's the same thing, drrsavetsky.com. But yeah, I think social media is the easiest place to keep up with me.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm sure you'll get a new following of Medical
Yeah.
Morals audience. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Savetsky. This was so fun.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
your
much.
time.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Take care
Bye.
now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Medical Morons. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review.